Everybody has heard what has happened. I feel like my privacy has been violated in more ways than one, and way more is already out there than I would want out there and that I care to share. So that's all I got to say about that.
That was Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow earlier this month in the aftermath of the home invasion that occurred while he was leading his team past the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Fortunately, Burrow wasn't the first or last high-profile sports star to be victimized in a similar fashion. Tonight, there's a new warning from the FBI to players and their leagues. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has more.
A bevy of break-ins targeting sports stars has fanned out to new victims over the weekend, with Dallas Mavericks superstar guard Luka Doncic the latest athlete to fall prey while his team played in Phoenix on Friday. This video showing boarded-up windows at the Maverick guard's home, and Dallas PD said officers responded to a burglary call Friday on a block lining up with the five-time All-Star's address. According to an internal police report obtained by the Dallas Morning News, thieves snatched some $30,000 worth of jewelry. It comes only weeks after some of the biggest names in sports, from Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow.
Someone is trying to break into the house right now.
To Chiefs players Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce have seen their homes robbed.
When somebody posts your house online, that everybody now has your address.
The Morning News even reporting the fiancée of Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott had thousands of dollars of items stolen from her car on the day after Christmas, though police have not confirmed that to NBC News. The FBI sending a memo to sports leagues cautioning them about what appears to be a pattern likely driven by South American theft groups and involving significant surveillance.
Pro athletes are being targeted because they have money, and you could easily tell from social media if they have things that you could easily steal, like watches or jewelry. And everybody knows when they're away at work.
NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins me now. Sam, describe what's in this new memo from the FBI.
Sure. So, Chris, it's called a liaison information report. Basically, it's the FBI saying we understand there that there's some sort of a crime pattern that has developed, some overlaps, and we're going to flag the private business, or in this case, sports leagues, as to what's going on. You have highly paid athletes who have been posting things, not necessarily in the cases of the individuals that we just talked about, but in general, it's very much out there that they have high-value electronics and cash and other things, fashionable bags that will be of interest to thieves, and also that this is a fairly sophisticated operation, that it's South American organized crime, they believe, that's doing deep-level surveillance and reconnaissance and really figuring out what exactly these athletes have, on top of the fact that they are public figures where their schedules are known, so those athletes can be targeted at times when they're not necessarily at home. And Chris, we're not just talking about mid-tier level athletes here. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Travis Kelce, Luka Doncic now. You're talking about some of the biggest names in sports, and their worlds have been penetrated, whether or not they have surveillance systems, security cameras or not. What the FBI is basically giving a heads up to these athletes is you need to make sure that you not only have that, but are more discreet in terms of what you're posting, because your image is out there. The access in this day and age is so evident and so relatable that it's putting you, in some respects, in danger. So you got to be really careful what you're doing.
So the thing that jumped out to me was, as this was happening, it seemed to me that it was possible a kind of sort of social contagion, that one group saw this happen and thought, oh, well, that's a pretty good idea. We can find the address of this person, and we know that Joe Burrow is playing in Monday Night Football. But the FBI seems to think that this is one group or set of groups that are pretty sophisticated and are doing all this and have been at it for a while. This is not ad hoc.
Definitely not. And I think it's important to draw the distinction, Chris, that this has been going on for a period of months. And perhaps there was some sort of a copycat effect here, in the sense that you saw, hey, we can actually reach someone of this profile and be successful. Why not try it again? But there was no language in the FBI's memo, if you will, that really delineates the idea that there's like just one or two groups that are doing this. More so the idea that it's really a depth of sophistication and the resources are there to implement it. What that means in terms of where they're coming from or how all this planning comes together, that's not exactly clear. But again, look at who is being targeted. Clearly, this is folks that have to have a lot of things at their disposal, a lot of tools in their toolbox to be able to accomplish this kind of thing.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Sam Brock with that reporting. For more on what we know about what's happening here, let's turn to Kavitha Davidson, sports writer, the host of the Sportly podcast. I got to imagine it's got people spooked. Also, even prior to this, right, security is an issue for athletes as far back as I've, been following sports and even covering it from time to time. I remember there was big break-ins that happened in Chicago Bulls stars. Everyone knows you have a lot of money, and people do know your schedule.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And what this actually reminds me of is, I don't know if you remember, about 15 years ago, there was the Hollywood bling ring, right? A bunch of Hollywood stars like Lindsay Lohan were being targeted by quite frankly, less sophisticated crime syndicate. Apparently, they were teenagers. But this is obviously ramped up. There is surveillance. They're using drones. They're able to map out and know exactly where the valuables are stashed in these houses and get in and out. And as Sam said, these are really high-profile athletes who have been on their teams for 5, 6, in some cases 10 years, and you have to wonder how long they've been staking out these players.
Yeah, and there's also the social media aspect is also interesting because, people post, and I post too. Everyone posts, but you can if you have a group that is determined to do this, they can essentially kind of even sort of itemize, right, what their expectation is of like what are the valuable items down to, well, you wore this watch in this pic on Instagram.
Absolutely. And actually, that was one of the FBI's recommendations to these athletes is don't post valuable things that you've bought. Now, easier said than done.
Well, it also sort of kills the whole point.
It kills the whole point, right?
Ironically,
it's aspirational and you're supposed to, all of that. But also don't post, don't make daily posts about where you are because it lets the criminals know a pattern of when you're coming and going. Don't post photos of the interior of your home. If you have a real estate listing, take out the floor plans that are online. All of those things that probably those of us who have regular people who have privacy concerns should also keep to heart.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, it seems to me, about how easily they seem to pull this off. I mean, I know that these folks have security, but it seems that whatever security they had was not sufficient to stymie them. And it seems like we haven't had any failed break-ins at this point.
Yeah, so not to blame the victim, but one of the things that has come out is that the majority of these homes that we're breaking into didn't have their security systems activated. So the FBI has, in their warning, said, please activate your systems, ramp them up with cameras if you don't already have them, hire private security. Tua Tagovailoa, in an incident completely unrelated to this, had his car broken into more than a year ago, and he hired private security, and he's had it since then. So maybe that's something that some players will take to heart as well.
There's also, of course, the schedule aspect of this, which is everyone knows if you're playing Monday Night Football. And I wonder if we're going to see a change to like making sure there's a bunch of people in your house on big game nights or days, or even like hiring private security to camp out there.
Well, security for sure. But I think that, first and foremost, the physical safety aspect of this is not to be overlooked.
No, it's scary as hell.
It's really a good thing. It's quite a good thing that nobody was actually at home for most of these break-ins. And I think that that's something that the FBI is also worried that if the timing somehow goes haywire and a wife or a child is at home, they've said to these players, do not engage, call security, call the police, and those kinds of things.
Do you think we're going to see like changes in the either public profile of these folks, the sort of activities and habits around like the walk-in in the tunnel in the NBA and the NFL, which are sort of opportunities to sort of, show off your bling or whatever as a result of this?
Well, a lot of those are also paid sponsorship, right? So I don't think that there's a way to actually get rid of those. And quite frankly, they're fun. And it would be a shame if that was the result of this.
I love the tunnel shots.
We love the tunnel shots, right? But I do think that some players, you've already seen Patrick Mahomes. He has not really spoken a lot about this except to answer whatever questions have been given him. On the other side of that, Bobby Portis Jr. took to Instagram. He's offering a $40,000 award. And he said that most of his, some of his most prized possessions were taken. So players are taking different tacks here.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that comes through in all this is if you're thinking about stealable items in terms of just like the raw efficiency of weight to value, jewelry and watches particularly
handbags.
Yeah, like those are, one of the players in Dallas who had his home broken into had $500,000 in watches stolen from his home while he's playing a home game. $500,000 probably this much, this much weight taken up in a bag.
For sure. And one of the things that I will say about that, though, is, obviously, as I said, the physical safety is the number one important thing here. A lot of this stuff is stuff and can be replaced. That's absolutely true. I will say that I'm on the board of a museum that was broken into. Yogi Berra's World Series rings were stolen. And when they caught the guys, they couldn't recover them because they had melted them down. So there are some things to these athletes that you can't replace and that you can't rebuy.
I remember in the Kirk Cousins in the quarterback NFL show where he goes into a room and he's got like all his trophies he's ever had, including like game balls. And it's clearly incredibly important to him, this room. That's the kind of thing that like would be incredibly devastating. Kavitha Davidson, thank you very much.